Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to the show. It is I, one of your hosts, Jackson. Welcome. The channel is named after me. Joining me is Peter of Gonna Go For It fame. He's our host and co-host. Welcome.
It's nice to be here, as always.
Well, you're just the nicest guy, so there you go.
And you're famous because I saw you on another channel
Oh, that's right.
earlier
I
today.
was on Orange Channel. Yes,
Yes.
correct. I totally forgot to open up the chat. There you go. Okay. And also joining us is one of my editors, Nestlig.
Hello, I'm
Well,
also
hello.
here and with a new microphone and to boot. Yeah,
Nice.
I hope it's a good quality mic.
Yeah. Yeah, you sound good. Yeah, I was on Orange Channel talking about finches and human evolution and stuff. That was fun. Had a good time. For the Genesis Impact video
Yeah.
he's doing where he like analyzes this video or I get it's like a movie. It's like a produced movie
Has
where
to
this
has to,
girl.
has to be because the docent is definitely an actor, not a
Right. Well,
docent.
he's like a mega church preacher or something like that, isn't he?
Ah, is he?
I think he is. I believe so. I think he's like a mega church pastor or something like that, which
They
makes perfect sense.
they tend to pretend that they're something that they're not. So,
Speaking for God, yeah,
yeah.
true. Let's see. So in the chat we have Majestic Peebeck, Dapper the Dinosaur, Vesta Freya, and Errant Massa, and Science Nerd, and RJ. Hello, everybody. Welcome all, and all are welcome. Yeah, it was fun being on Orange Show. I enjoyed it. Yeah, the fun thing about that was I think that's like I don't know if you've seen the video, but I think you'll get a kick out of this. The guy, there's this guy in the audience who claims the girl is right when she completely lies about Finch evolution. He's like, oh yeah, she's totally right. Because there was a study on.
In the RR video, right?
Yeah, did you see the newest Arn video?
Oh, sorry, I did not see
Oh, it's
that.
okay.
Sorry.
I'll relay
No.
the important part is, uh, this guy in the audience says that he says, or at least heavily implies, that the differences between the finches are only epigenetic. They're not genetic. He says
Wow.
the evidence for evolution that the finches provide. He's like, oh well, they're not actually evidence for evolution because the study came out that showed there can be epigenetic changes in the finches that can also contribute to their beak sizes, as though that
And that's silly.
somehow defeats genetics. I guess I don't know how that works, but
It, like even if it were even if it were true, that still would be very interesting as well for evolution to incorporate as well. I think also like
right.
one of the few things that is epigenetic is very important is developmental patterns. Like your
Mm,
own cells, aside from a few mutations, your individual cells are all the same. So it's epigenetics that determines why one cell becomes an eye cell or one cell
right.
becomes a liver cell. Yeah.
Well, and the
Also, it's also important. It's also important when it comes to the casting system of
mm,
eusocial species as well. Like
mhm,
why one individual turns into a queen or a worker, for example. Yeah.
right. Yeah, right. But he referenced a normal study that was like, yeah, epigenetics contributes to beak finch or sorry, finch beak sizes, right? And this was
Mhm.
looking specifically at Geospiza fortis and Geospiza fuliginosa. And ironically, the paper actually showed that there was no epigenetic changes causing
Of
morphological
course.
differences in fuliginosa. It was only in fortis. So even according to the paper, epigenetics is not solely responsible for beak sizes. And of course, nobody believes that anyways, because that's ridiculous.
Hmm.
Because
Of
for
course.
that to be
Yeah.
true, for it to be true that epigenetics are solely responsible for finch beak sizes, it would have to be the case that all the different finch species have identical genomes, which is insane, right? That's just crazy. So it was a lot of fun. It was just off the wall bonkers. I loved it. Trojan source. Yes, it was a Trojan source. Oh, Jamie E is here. Hello. Yeah, it was terrible. It was hilarious. So yeah, so that was fun. Go watch.
Is it Trojan source basically providing a source for a claim, but the source itself just contradicts the very claim? That's Trojans.
Yeah.
Yeah, all right.
There was another one. I went on Orange Channel a while back because I think it was Big Wave Dave. It was those videos. And Big Wave Dave says, like, if you take a Mexican blind cavefish and you raise it in an environment with light, it grows eyes like normal. It says that the only reason it doesn't grow eyes is it lives in a dark environment. Well, if you go read the paper that he cites, it says literally the exact opposite. It says if you grow the blind cavefish in an environment with light, it does not grow eyes. It says that in the paper. It's amazing. It's so good. It's like he read that and just omitted "not" from the sentence and just went and ran with it. Crazy stuff.
It's apparently a trend where they are slowly but surely turning completely to like a Lamarckian thing.
Yeah.
Where they deny genetics altogether almost. Yeah.
Which is crazy because if you know anything about the history of science, the church, the Catholic Church, was arguing vehemently against Lamarckism back in the early 1800s. They were super against it. And now like the creationists are like, we're going to be the neo-Lamarckists. It doesn't make any sense. None of it makes any sense. So yeah, it's just
also hyper-evolution is true when it comes to the post-flood radiation.
Yeah, super ultra caffeinated hyper-evolution. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but that's just adaptation. Which
you're right.
The definition for adaptation you also covered on Orange Channel. Weird.
Mm-hmm.
Adaptation is evolution. Do the creationists know? Has anyone told them?
I think they know and they just pretend not to.
I did facepalm once during the video because yeah, and I'm definitely going to steal what you said there.
Okay.
When you said when people ask me what's your best evidence for evolution, it's the fact that we can see it happen. And I thought,
right.
I've never thought of that. I know this.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, I'm really curious what a rebuttal of that or a response to that would be.
Well, their response is always like it's only microevolution, right? Even when it is macroevolution per the definition, it's still they're like, oh, it's microevolution.
And my response,
or it's still the same kind, or
my response to that would be: so you acknowledge that we can see evolution happen, because that's what you just said.
Right. And what's funny is the girl says in the video, there's always a loophole or an inference that you have to make. And it's like, but for creationists, there's always a loophole.
Yeah.
If you point out, we've literally witnessed evolution.
Google Garfunkel and Oates. Oh, wait, that's a different. Oh, sorry.
If you tell them we've literally, CET is continuous environmental tracking is what RJ's referring to. If you say we've literally witnessed evolution, they say, well, it's not enough. And then if you say, well, here's the fossil record, they say, well, you can't prove that all those animals are related. You know, it's like you can't win. There's nothing you can do to win. Or, you know, well, we have the evidence, you know, like radiometric dating shows that these fossils are so many millions of years old. They say, well, I don't trust radiometric dating. But we can use it on things that we have dated through historical methods, right? We've dated volcanoes to the calendar year, right? We know when Vesuvius
Mount Vesuvius eruption, right? That was dated to,
and it's not just Mount Vesuvius. When volcanoes erupt and their ash goes into the air, it can cover a very long distance, and then it can end up in ice cores. So it lands somewhere where it's snowing and gets compacted into ice and becomes part of the ice layers. And so researchers can count the ice layers and go, aha, this ice layer was formed in 1850. And based on the type of ash that's here and the direction the ash came from, it most likely was this volcano, which through other historical records we have dated to 1850, whatever. And like that's normal. And they just kind of like, no, you can't trust it. It's not real.
Now, Jackson,
There's nothing.
You
nothing
can't trust any kind of dating except when it comes to dating wood that was used to build the ark.
Right. Yeah.
That can ham, because if people go there, if you get to park quite a ways away from the ark and then get a shuttle bus to the ark, and when you get in the shuttle bus, there's an introduction audio thing going on, and they will tell you how old the wood is that they use to make the ark. So apparently you can date some of the wood, not all of it.
Just not all of it.
No.
Yeah, right. Because the wood, the continuous record of dendrochronology, so wood ring counting or tree ring counting, goes back 13,000 years. 13,000 years, which, if I remember correctly, is a little bit older than they think the universe is.
Yes.
But you use the same exact method, the same dating method, to know that, like, this college in Oxford was built in 1675, right? Or this building in DC was built in, the 1890s. You use literally the same method. It's the same method to do both. It's so frustrating. So, anyway. All right. Yeah. So speaking of frustrating, we're looking at Long Story Short today. We haven't covered Long Story Short in a while. I know I've said this on channel before, but for anyone who hasn't heard it, we used to do back and forths with him. And he's
what a fun time it was.
Yeah, that's a word we'll use. He's just blatantly dishonest.
F is for frustrating.
F is for frustrating. Yeah, he's just blatantly dishonest and disingenuous. The last response we made to him, we had a 13 or 14 minute section. It was the first section, the first 13 or 14 minutes, where we just talked about how we know that pachycetids and ambulocetids are cetaceans, are whales, are early whales. And when he made his response to us, he just skipped it. Because we've been going back and forth about the same topic. And he just skips it. He just ignores it. And at that point, I was like, I'm done. I don't care anymore. This dude's a hack. He's dishonest. He doesn't know any of this stuff anyways, because he did argue that the platypus is a chimera of different animals. He thought that having low bootstrap values meant that evolution doesn't work, or that phylogenetics don't work, which doesn't make any sense, or that having low bootstrap values for certain trees means that the nested hierarchy of life isn't real. He did seriously argue that. It's just off the wall bonkers stuff. Frustrating, unnerving, nettled. Yes, very true. But yeah, he's super dishonest. So anyway, of course he works for the Discovery Institute now. The Discovery Institute scooped him up, just like I think Answers in Genesis scooped up a bit of Orange. I don't know if you guys remember him.
Yeah.
Professor.
I haven't seen him on. Does he do videos on that channel?
I haven't seen his stuff in since around the time. So right before Bill Ludlow died. Bill Ludlow was the last person I saw do a video on a bit of Orange, because a bit of Orange went to the museum where Bill Ludlow worked, and that was the last time I ever saw him. I have not seen him. That's been 2 years, 2 or 3 years now, something like that. It's been a while.
It got progressively worse, because after a bit of Orange, we got a lot of Orange. So how did that work out?
Well, I got a lot of Orange.
I mean,
who might be a lot of jail pretty soon. So
Yes, yeah. Someone tweeted he's going to be president in 2025, and I quote tweeted that and said, "When autocorrect screws up, imprisoned."
That's pretty funny. But
Yeah.
so hey, don't can't do the time, don't do the crime, right?
Yeah.
Isn't that what they say? So yeah, I have not seen a bit of Orange since way back then. So I don't know if he still does creationist stuff. I don't know if he's like Ian Juby just doing train spotting now or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah.
No idea. Haven't seen him.
But there
So,
are a lot of LSS videos. Yeah.
There are. Yeah,
And-
and he's doing like Origin of Life now. Yeah.
And
Yep.
it's worth noting that Ian Juby is doing train spotting on disused railroad. I'm not kidding.
Peter, there's something almost poetic about that.
Yes. Yes. I mean,
I can't quite put my finger on it, but I think there's something almost poetic about it. Anyway.
well, good riddance,
So,
I'd say. And maybe I do have a slight hope that if a bit of Orange went to visit Bill Ludlow, that maybe Bill Ludlow was convincing enough to make him stop making stupid videos. No, you never know.
Yeah.
It happens.
Well, yeah, when we had that conversation, he was like, which becomes, a worm becomes a fish, which becomes a gecko, which becomes a squirrel, which is something like that. It was nonsense. Kyle Hardy says,
I now remember that we talked to him many years
we
ago.
did. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you for reminding me. I almost forgot.
Like I tried to repress it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Kyle Hardy says, RJ, we need the dynamic duo RJ and Jackson back on Modern Day Debate. I'm always happy to have RJ on this channel. I will never be going back on Modern Day Debate because Modern Day Debate hosts Nazis now, and I will not be on a channel that hosts Nazis. So
Same.
So that's sorry. I'll go on other people's channel. I'll even go on. I'll go on Creationist channel.
There are several channels who host debates that you can go to. I host debates. Jefferson Spatchcock hosts debates. Amy Newman hosts debates. Amy Newman, people might know from Modern Day Debate. We all host debates. So if you want to set up a debate,
I'll host them.
Get in touch
Dapper
with any
Dinosaur
of us.
hosts them. Yeah.
No problem whatsoever.
Yeah. Dapper says, how dare Jackson not want to hang out and drink in the Nazi bar? Yeah. I know, crazy stuff. Yeah, Dapper will host debates. Dapper's a very good host. He's hosted a couple of, he's hosted at least one debate. He was the moderator for at least one debate that I did, and he's a very fair moderator. He did tell me to shut up a few times, so I think that's quite fair. But yeah, no, I mean, so yeah, lots of people will host debate. I'll even go on creationist channels as long as I don't host Nazis. But I'm fine with that. That's fine. I don't care.
I'm having a brain fart thinking back when we met shortly after that. You and I hosted a debate. Remember?
Between Aaron and Mr. ID.
Oh.
Yes. Yeah, we did. Did.
Fun times.
That was the first time I think I'd seen Aaron like rage quit from a debate.
Well, here's the thing. This is the one thing where I got a lot of respect for Aaron, because both you and I were new at trying to set up debates. Both you and I screwed up and didn't check out Mr. ID before contacting Arn. And then we had to basically tell Arn, we're going to debate an idiot. And Arn said, I committed. You guys did the work. You guys promoted the show. I am going to be there. And to me, these were two brand new YouTubers. No one had ever heard of them back then. And he just committed and he was there. The funniest thing was that during the opening statement of Mr. ID, Arn decided to go clean his room, which still is one of the funniest things I've ever seen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The experiment, yes.
It was the experiment.
It was
yes.
the experiment where he dropped eggs through tissue paper.
And so
Oh.
the conclusion of the experiment was 9 shits. I remember that. 9 shits.
I don't.
I still have
He was
no clue what or
he had
why.
done I think several days before Orange debate with him, he had done like an 8-hour stream. Mr. ID had on somebody else's channel, an 8-hour stream. That's insane. I don't know how anyone goes 8 hours on YouTube. I don't get it. This okay,
I
Peter probably has, but
I have done a 10-hour stream with a Christian who told me to watch a 45-minute video, which would 100% certain make me a Christian. It didn't. And this 10-hour stream was so frustrating that I got help from a Christian. I'm not kidding.
Yeah.
That's how frustrating that guy was.
12 hours?
Yeah, he did. Yeah, I do. Yeah, he did do like a 12-hour stream. Yeah.
How do you manage that?
I don't know. I know John Maddox has done he did one stream that went for like 8 hours or something, but didn't he fall asleep during it?
I was on one of John Maddox's streams that went on for 8 hours, and he left. And at the end, it was just
probably
me.
Went to bed or something.
Yeah, it was just me and another atheist. And that's where we showed that the atheists are the better people, because we didn't abuse the fact that there was no one there preventing us from saying pretty much anything we wanted. Kept it civil, and we left.
If you're gaming, perhaps you can last for a lot longer because you keep yourself entertained. But I would last. Yeah, I would last that long without entertaining myself, at least.
I know Dapper and I have hung out we've hung out on stream for maybe 2 or 3 hours before, but yeah, I don't know about.
Oh, yesterday it was 5 hours. Yes, like yesterday.
Jackson.
Well, I wasn't there for the whole thing. I was only there for the.
All right.
You have done longer streams. You were both part of movie night, which sometimes went anywhere between 6 and 8 hours.
Yes. Well, okay. I was never there for the whole thing. I would always leave around midnight or so. I couldn't stay for those whole things. All right. Anyways. All right. So we're almost 25 minutes in. So let's get to antibiotic resistance in bacteria. What's the real story? Discovery.
I was hoping you would almost forget about it.
You'd hope I forget about it. Yeah. Well, actually, our next video is also going to be Discovery Institute stuff. So,
Okay.
Well, okay. The thing is, I don't know. Discovery Institute puts out a lot of stuff that a lot of people tend to cite. I don't see people citing AIG videos as much, but it's also hard to find creationist videos that we haven't covered all their arguments already, because they don't have anything new. They have no new arguments.
You shouldn't have done the book. You shouldn't have done the book.
If you look at what Georges Cuvier, the French anatomist, did back in the 1700s, you will see the same arguments being used today. The argument about there are kinds because morphology is discontinuous, the fact that there are gaps in the fossil record, Georges Cuvier used those arguments 300 years ago.
Jackson,
creationism doesn't change.
Yeah, Jackson, but the truth never changes. Look at the That's how that works.
That's true.
Well, there are a few exceptions, like for example the what's it called again? The continuous environmental tracking thing.
Okay, well, so it's sort of new. It's both new and not. It's kind of like a twist on ideas that already
polishing
existed.
a third, right? Polishing a third.
Yeah, rewrapping a turd. Yeah, it's that sort of thing. Yeah. All right. So let's get to long story short. Let's see what the real story is about antibiotic resistance and how it's totally not evolution, even though it meets the definition of evolution.
Yeah, there's a thing in the Netherlands. Okay. A guy comes to the doctor. It pretty much happens.
Have you seen the video, Jackson, or not?
No, I haven't watched it. We're going to be going in.
Nestle doesn't.
Okay,
Nestle
can you
doesn't
make
want
an
to watch.
can you make a guess? Can you make a guess what the what its arguments are going to be?
Okay, all right, fine. I got you. Okay, so my prediction for this video is my prediction is twofold. One is he's gonna say it's not evolution, that bacteria undergoing adaptation to become resistant to antibiotics is not evolution. That's part one, and that even though it is genetic change, this is still part of part one. Even though it is genetic change, it doesn't matter because it doesn't get you from molecules to man. That's my prediction number one. My second prediction is he's going to say the only examples of antibiotic resistance that there are only involve a loss. They only involve a loss of either genes or enzymes. Genes or enzymes. He's not going to say, so he's not going to admit that there are lots of examples of just point mutations resulting in antibiotic resistance or something like that, or maybe gene duplications or something like that. I'm willing to bet that that's going to be his arguments.
Well, I have watched this whole video many years ago, and you just covered the bulk of it, most of it.
Whoa! Whoa! Creationists don't make new arguments. Wow, who would have thunk it? All right, let's get to it. Let's see what we got.
Okay.
Hey, Doc, I think I've got an ear infection. Antibiotics are a wonderful medicine when dealing with bacterial infections, but unfortunately they're sometimes misused.
My car is making this funny sound. Chooka 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 chooka.
When antibiotics are misused, it can lead to them suddenly not working anymore. And if you ask folks like Richard Dawkins and Bill Nye the Science Guy, the answer is that this is incontrovertible proof of evolution right before our very eyes.
That's true.
Can I just point out, this is what we got because Kent Hovind keeps talking about cars and that the lug nuts from a Chevy will fit. Now they're using antibiotics on cars.
Oh,
someone has
I
to
didn't
stop
see the super chat. Vandalia 1998 for $4.99 says, speaking of antibiotics, what's your opinion on using phages instead? I have not looked into that sort of research, but I'm a little hesitant to use viruses to combat bacteria.
Bacteriophages are harmless to us. They only infect bacteria, so it's a very precise.
So is that used a lot?
Yeah.
Is it used a lot?
And maybe not a lot. Maybe not a lot because it's difficult to, or maybe it's more challenging to synthesize and use it than normal antibiotics. But yeah, I'm not familiar with that either.
Well, okay. Vandalia, if it gets approved by the FDA, if it works on a lot of patients and turns out it's great and everything, then sure, absolutely, why not?
Yeah. Although I think one thing would be should be careful about is that bacteriophages are also one method that bacteria use to transfer genes between each other, and it's also implicated in antibiotic resistance as well.
That's true. Oh goodness, what is it?
Horizontal gene transfer, yeah.
No, yes, but transduction, right? It's transduction, isn't it? Where they?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, I believe it's transduction. One problem is finding the right viruses to kill the bacteria infecting you. Yeah, it's probably true. I don't know. Haven't looked into it. I'll try to read about it. See if I can see what I can see about it. But as of right now, I don't know. I mean, if it works, then it works. If not, then okay. There are lots of different ways that we try to combat bacteria, right? We use beta lactams like penicillin and amoxicillin and ampicillin, and then bacteria develop like beta lactamases. So these enzymes that basically boot the beta lactams, and so we moved on to carbapenems to as our next sort of cocktail, And then, of course, bacteria develop carbopenomases, which are enzymes to boot the carbapenems, and it's round and round and round. And I think there are different amino acids that are used, if I remember correctly, or something like that. I don't quite remember, but yeah, it's a constant struggle because we keep making new medicines and they keep booting the medicines, so then we have to make some more. It is an evolutionary arms race. The thing is, for one, he's right. It is an evolutionary arms race. That's literally the definition of an evolutionary arms race. Is you have two sides which are evolving to compete against each other. They're to use.
Well, you can argue that we aren't evolving. We just use technology to
Normally, normally in the wild you have, like, for instance, birds. You have some bird which is getting parasitized, like, by a cuckoo, for instance. And so a population of cuckoos is parasitizing some species of bird. And so over generations, the bird species getting parasitized is being selected to become better and better at identifying which eggs are theirs and which eggs are the cuckoo's. And so once essentially the birds start pushing back, the birds getting parasitized, then the cuckoo has to respond, most likely, by evolving to have their eggs look very similar to those of their the birds that they're parasitizing. And so when you look at host parasites in the wild, what you see a lot of is like host parasite speciation. So these two speciate together, essentially. So when you have natural selection carrying the host in some direction, the parasite also gets carried in that direction because they're trying to outcompete the host. So you have cuckoos whose eggs look specifically like one species of bird, the one that they parasitize the most. The same is true of nematodes and trematodes, who parasitize us. We and other vertebrates evolve, various immune responses to them, and then they evolve ways of evading that immune response, and round we go. And so, that is an evolutionary arms race. And you're right. Analogously, how we use medicine is also, in a sense, like an evolutionary arms race. We have to keep developing new technology. Obviously, we're not evolving in response.
Maybe you can describe it as like a sort of niche construction, right? Our use of medicine can be viewed as a niche construction mechanism, perhaps.
And so the generations of bacteria.
Instead of changing our genetics or our own bodies, we change our environment to aid our own survival.
Right. There's a famous analogy by Van Valen, the guy who came up with the Red Queen hypothesis, which says that, like, the host and the parasite are, they have to keep running faster to stay in place, which is what Alice and the Red Queen did in Alice in Wonderland. In essence, both are adapting to each other, but to stay in the same, like, to remain fit, right? Fit enough to survive. So, that is why viral parasites are so successful and insidious, because it becomes part of you. And what's really cool is some viruses actually end up in our genome as like endogenous retroviruses. So they insert a copy of their genome into ours, and their genomes are very short. They're just a few genes long. And then they get stuck in our genome. So, and what's really cool is you can use, on the one hand, you can use endogenous retroviruses to build a phylogeny. So you can see the ones that we share with chimps, and then we share a smaller percent with gorillas, and then smaller with orangutans, and with all monkeys and all mammals, etc. But also there are some human populations who have a particular endogenous retrovirus, but other human populations don't. So we can also see this going on in real time. So, do you guys want to add anything?
Maybe
I think we can continue.
Maybe just I read the small print. When they say, it's Richard Dawkins and Bill Nye. They're referring to. Okay. It's a small print at the bottom of the screen.
I do like the animation on this, as I said before, his animation is really good. It's just that it's being used for evil. So,
Yeah.
All right, we can keep going.
An evolutionary arms race, they say. As our weapons of medical warfare get stronger and more sophisticated, so too the bugs we're fighting are getting stronger. They're evolving better defenses, making them immune to the best we can throw at them. The power of natural selection and random mutation laughs at our incompetent medical prowess.
I don't think it's incompetence, but all right.
Bacterial evolution and antibiotic resistance is one of the all-time greatest hits regarding evidence for evolution.
Okay.
It's perhaps a bit subtle, but as you notice how he portrays like the evolution of the bacteria becoming more and more stronger and such, like it's almost like a Pokemon evolution, you know, becoming bigger, better, and stronger. Like he is portraying evolution as he's already poisoning the well a bit by portraying evolution as an autogenic process. That's one tiny issue that I have.
Yeah, I mean, I think he may have just been doing it just as sort of just sort of tongue in cheek.
You can say that as well, but he also goes back into like, it's not as impressive as it's at first seems. Of course, if you portray evolution that way, then of course it doesn't. The reality is not as impressive as a Charmeleon turning into a Charizard.
Right. It's like, oh, they're using a particular enzyme more than they used to. Ooh, you know. It's like, well, yeah, but now they're resistant to this antibiotic, so I mean, you know.
Right.
Anyway, all right.
Anyway, it's just a tiny issue that I have. It's not a very big important issue, but we can continue.
Yeah. Gotcha.
And it's true that antibiotics do sometimes stop working. And antibiotic resistance is a form of evolution, narrowly speaking.
We did it, folks.
But is this a demonstration of the creative power of Darwinian evolution, or is there something else going on? Let's take a look more closely. Let's get to know these bacteria killers we affectionately call antibiotics. How do they keep us alive? Where do they come from? What's their favorite kind of ice cream? There's a lot of ways for antibiotics to defeat bacteria. Some explode it.
Sure.
Some gum up the works.
Sure.
Some starve the little bugs out. Others prevent them from multiplying, and so on. But there's essentially only one or two ways that bacteria can become resistant to antibiotics. The first and most common way bacteria gain resistance is that it's always been there. Antibiotic-resistant bacteria actually pre-exist the invention of modern antibiotics.
Okay,
There's an interesting story of some Arctic explorers.
Wait a second. Hold up. Okay. All right.
Pre-creation bacteria.
All right. So, okay. So, there is this idea in biology. It's not a crazy idea. It's not new or anything. It is this idea of oh crap, now I've lost the name for it. Saturation. Yeah, mutation saturation is the idea I was looking for. So basically, every individual has mutations. This is inevitable. Every single one of us has mutations. Just they're uniquely part of us. You know, when we're just little teeny tiny gametes. So our genome is only so long, and bacteria have pretty short genomes compared to ours, anyways. So even if you have just a few point mutations, even if you have just 1 point mutation per individual, if there are more individuals, you know, than the length of your genome, then theoretically, you could have saturated every single nucleotide with a point mutation, right? Every single one of them, in theory. So bacteria, if a bacterial genome, because I think, what is it? There was one I was looking at not too long ago. I think it was Staph aureus. It was like 6 million base pairs, something like that. And let's be real, there are more than 6 million Staph aureus on the planet. So by that alone, if it only takes a few point mutations to cause antibiotic resistance, then yeah, the odds you're going to find bacteria who already have those mutations is going to be pretty high. That's not super crazy, right? At least I don't think it is. I don't think that's crazy. But furthermore, yeah, they pre-exist, right? They pre-exist, and they kind of have to, because if they didn't already exist, if a selective pressure caused mutations to occur, then that would fundamentally change how we understand evolution, right? Because it's natural selection acts on existing mutations. So the mutations
it acts on
precede the
existing
selection.
variation. Yeah.
Right, yeah. Natural selection acts on the existing variations in the population. It's not, well, we don't have any mutations. Oh, there's a selective pressure. Now let's have some mutations. It's not how that works. Who's your buddy for $5 says it's not the size of your genome, it's how you use it. Very true. Correct.
All right.
Right. Yeah. So in that sense,
this is not relevant. Basically, it's
right.
It's not what we don't expect these mutations to only arise when it's needed, because that will be more of a that will be more of a directed
which doesn't happen.
Mutation thing. Yeah, it's
even in the cases where you have like where we have a hypermutation to make like antibodies. It's not directed mutation. It's hypermutation, but like random mutations in this region, right?
Right.
So there's a there's a probabilistic distribution of mutations you're going to get, right? So it's I mean, you're right. It's like this is a red herring. This is irrelevant to the discussion. So.
It assumes a premise that's not held by the scientist. Yeah.
Right.
The premise being we only expect these resistant bacteria to appear when the antibiotics exist.
Right.
And that's not the case. But although sometimes it may be the case. For example, some antibiotics are naturally occurring, like for example the penicillin, produced by certain fungi.
Right. Penicillium. That
could induce a selective pressure on bacteria in the wild, even. So but of course, even without the selective pressure, you can still have the appearance of this variation in the wild. Yeah.
Right.
It's not an issue. No issue here.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you're right. It assumes a premise. I like that. It assumes a premise that no one holds. Right.
Yeah. Okay. Of course, you can always find that one person, but pretty much nobody holds this premise. Yeah.
All right, we can keep going.
Should we point out that Jamie posted the link to the article on screen?
Jamie posted the link to this article, which I have no qualms with this article. I'm sure it's fine. Even back in the like the 40s, which was when penicillin first started being used, microbiologists were already aware of bacteria that were resistant to penicillin, right? Back when they first started using it, they already were aware of bacteria that were resistant. So yeah, because as Nestling said, there are fungi that use penicillin to kill bacteria. So it stands to reason that there would be some bacteria that were already resistant. So,
From back in the 1800s. Turns out they froze to death before the discovery and use of antibiotics. Some morbid scientists found them recently and took samples of their gut bacteria and found that they already had resistance to some of our most powerful...
Some morbid scientists found them.
modern antibiotics. Just like some people are naturally short and immune to limbobars, some bacteria naturally have a pre-existing resistance to antibiotics. Not because they've gained this ability after an encounter with the antibiotic, but it's just always been the case.
Okay. Wait,
that said, bacteria do...
Hold on. Okay, so this assumes...
that's the premise that we were talking about. Yeah.
So it's like he's like almost there, but then he just jumps it. He just jumps the ship. So the resistance is conferred by mutations that formerly did not exist and then came into existence at some point in the past, right? What he seems to be implying, and I don't want to straw man him, but it seems like he was implying when he said that these mutations have always existed. So the counter argument, the other position, the opposite position of these mutations came into existence at a point in the past is they always existed from the beginning, which I don't know. I don't think LSS is a young Earth creationist. He said some things that make me iffy on that, but I don't think he is. But so the alternative,
he says, if I remember correctly, he denies he is a young Earther. Yeah.
Okay. So right. So given that, he would have to believe that, like, whenever God created bacteria, I don't know, or they just sprung into existence, they all already had like every possible variation.
Well, that makes
because
sense.
that's the only alternative position.
Jackson, that
right?
just makes sense because God is omniscient and he will know that in the future,
I guess so.
long time after Adam and Eve, humans will figure this out. So he needs to have something in place in order to foil them.
Yeah,
he
that's
can't
true.
interfere with his plan. If he wants you dead, you're dead. That's how that works.
Yeah.
It's
just the way it is.
It's
but
a
it's
silly argument for people who think creationism is a thing.
But he's not even the only person who I've heard make this argument, right? I think creationists like to make this argument that the variations just existed, but like no one ever presses them, or they don't let anyone press them on, well, then where were they? Do you think God made bacteria with all possible variations? Because if not, then the variations had to come into existence, in which case mutations, random mutations, generated these variations. So which is it? And to my knowledge, I have never heard an answer to that. Not saying it's not possible. You can pick one of the options. I'm just saying I haven't heard it. Just me. Okay. All right.
We can continue.
Yeah, we can continue. I'm sorry, I was
have
just
a
reading
neat
the
special
chat.
ability that short people don't have. They love to share. Not just cooking recipes and financial advice, but super personal things like their very own DNA. They'll swap loops of DNA called plasmids in a process called horizontal gene transfer, or HGT. Like third graders with Pokemon cards, they have no idea how they got them or even what they do, but they'll trade them back and forth, and occasionally they'll share these resistance genes.
So Nestlig, I have a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
Is not the definition of evolution a change in allele frequencies in a population over generations? Is that not a common definition of evolution? And is that, follow-up question, is that what's happening here?
I have heard that phrase before, and I think it's the right definition, yes. And I also think it also applies here too. Right.
So you are saying that horizontal gene transfer is changing over generations the frequency of particular alleles within a population, and that is in fact evolution, as you know, as we generally define it.
Yes.
I just want to make sure, because that it sounds like what he's describing is evolution. I just wanted to be clear, right? I don't want to straw man him or anything. Okay, we can keep going.
But Jackson, did you know that only mutations is the only mechanism that you can have?
Is that right?
Horizontal gene transfer is just cheating, apparently.
I guess so. All right, we can keep going.
Yeah.
Nothing new has been made or evolved, though. Bacteria already had the ability to trade plasmids, and the genes for resistance already existed before antibiotics. This is hardly an arms race, and it's not a demonstration of Darwinian creative power, since there's no new mutation.
Okay, so he's saying, as of right now, he may change his position later in the video, but what he's saying right now is that horizontal gene transfer is the only means by which bacteria... That's what it's saying.
Right now he is, but he will say another thing later. But yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
but that's as of right now, he's saying there are no new mutations, and I guess that God just created all bacteria with all possible variations at the beginning, and that they just trade variations by horizontal gene transfer. Maybe that's not his position, but as of right now, that's what he seems to be saying. So.
He's basically saying that since these, like in these cases, the mutations are not new. They were always they were there before. It's not Darwinian, which is strange because if you actually know what Darwinian evolution is, it's the mechanism. The key mechanism is natural selection,
right?
Not mutations.
Right.
Mutations is something that was actually formulated by somebody else. I don't know who it was again. There was like the
mutations.
There were two early camps: the mutationists and the Darwinists.
Mutations
the
like
Eclipse of
Hugo
Darwin.
de Vries, Thomas Hunt Morgan, all those guys.
Yes. They were mutationists. Yeah, and of course later on, when the theory was synthesized, when the theory also incorporated mutations along with natural selection. Yeah. So.
Right. The other thing about this argument, and you're right, it is strange, is yes, horizontal gene transfer is happening, but if there is no selective pressure for one particular set of alleles over any other, then it's not natural selection. If there's no selective pressure, there's no reason for these alleles to go to fixation, right? Unless,
right,
and especially because in genetic drift, if there's a very large population, it becomes very unlikely that any particular allele is going to go to fixation purely by drift, right? There has to be natural selection. It's not impossible. It's just very unlikely. But in the case of antibiotic resistance, there is obviously a selective pressure that is driving the allele to fixation. So you're right. It's weird that he would say it's not Darwinism when it literally is Darwinism.
He glosses over the question about why it is the case that these antibiotic-resistant bacteria are becoming more prevalent these days. And he does not even address that question. He just, like, the reason why it is the case, at least according to the consensus, is that, of course, it's because of a selective pressure. The bacteria who have this resistance are more reproductively successful, and then the new generations will inherit these resistant traits.
By golly, that sounds like evolution, Nestlig. We can keep going.
Mutations and no new genes that have been made. Not only that, but these extra resistance genes are frequently a net negative on fitness. Bacteria with extra useless genes tend to be less fit than regular old vanilla bugs.
Boss.
Imagine you're in a foot race.
What does he mean useless? If they're being used to combat antibiotics, then they're definitionally not useless. What does that even mean?
He's bastardizing the definition of fitness as meaning no trade-offs, like absolutely no trade-offs. That's basically it. Yeah.
Does he think that like everything else that isn't related to antibiotic resistance instantly becomes useless? Because that's
he's saying that he is saying that without the antibiotics, sometimes or maybe always, I'm not sure which he holds to, but sometimes the non-resistant bacteria are more fit than the resistant bacteria, because the resistant bacteria have some kind of trade-off to their trait. Yeah.
Right. You can't do as much like normal metabolism because now you have to like fix your like your bacterial wall, for instance. Now, so you're less fit in terms of doing metabolism, but you are more fit in terms of protecting yourself from antibiotic resistance, which is a net positive, as long as that selective pressure still exists. Yeah,
and that's the whole point of fitness. Like, fitness is not an absolute thing. Like, it's just relative depending on the environment. Like, if one environment wanted maybe more fit, in another environment it may be less fit. So
right. Again, he's assuming premises that nobody holds.
Yeah, the premise that fitness means you don't have any cost to your new trait that may be beneficial in one environment. Yeah, it's
Right.
of course that's not. There may be some cases where there is no trade-off to a new trait, but I'm not aware of those. Maybe there are, but I think that there are many trade-offs when it comes to antibiotic resistance, because it takes like some form of energy at least to either export the antibiotics. Like I think bacteria also like use proteins to export the antibiotic outside the cell, just to get rid of it, or they use enzymes to digest it.
Right.
And making those enzymes also has a cost as well, of course. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
And
Yeah, this is just nonsense.
Also keep in mind that every mutation is a loss information.
Right, of course.
Yeah, he will get into that as well. Yeah.
Yeah, you can't get fitter if you lose stuff. It's they have already dug their own hole to fall into.
Usually don't need a duffel bag filled with camping supplies, a pickaxe, spare bowling balls, and a weed whacker during your typical foot race. If you do, great. Otherwise, it's a huge waste of energy lugging all of that stuff around, and it makes you less competitive. Bacteria with extra genetic load tend to be less fit than regular old vanilla bugs.
What about mutations, though?
Okay,
This
but wait.
is the second less common.
Okay, but the point is, if you need all of those things to do the foot race, if the only way to do the foot race is you have to carry the pack and the bowling balls and the weed whacker, and only if you carry all those will you win, well, then that's the point, right? But if you're carrying those and you don't need all of them to win the foot race, then yeah, of course it'd be pointless. But the point of antibiotic resistance is they do have to carry all the extra baggage with them, right? That's the point. You have to have all this to do that.
It's strange because like he doesn't say this directly, but his argument right here sort of implies that the antibiotic resistant bacteria are not more reproductively successful than the non-resistant bacteria when it comes to also situations when there is antibiotics. Like it's weird. Because I think if you were to ask him, like, oh, do you think that the resistant bacteria have a reproductive advantage in a person that has antibiotics in them? Then I think he would say yes, but that defeats his whole argument right here, because they are more fit. They are more fit in those circumstances.
Also, from Majestic P. Beck for 550. We have great being here. No need for me to duck down as all this goes way over my head. No, I don't think so. This isn't. No, you're fine. You're fine. This is fine. Thank you.
Majestic P. Beck came over from Orange Channel, so probably doing themselves a little bit of a disservice saying everything goes over my head.
Yeah.
Probably not everything. Okay, continue.
Yes, yeah.
Common, but more interesting way that bacteria develop resistance to antibiotics. How does it work? Scientists are aware of pre-existing resistance. So to exclude it as a possibility in experiments, they can start with a single normal, non-resistant bacteria and let that multiply over and over again, and eventually the bacteria population can still develop resistance on its own.
Here's how. True. That does happen.
When copying their DNA, organisms are pretty accurate and mutations are relatively rare. But given enough time, errors do sneak in, like typos or autocorrect when you're texting someone. Sometimes they're no big deal and you can get along in spite of them. But sometimes these mutations really do something and can confer resistance or even immunity to antibiotics. Amazing, that must demonstrate the mighty power of evolution. Well, hold your horses. It's sort of like someone who has no arms saying that they're immune to handcuffs. No legs? You're immune to toenail fungus. No teeth? Congratulations, you're immune to cavities. Think of how much you'll save on toothpaste and floss expenses. Deaf and blind? You're immune to getting annoying songs stuck in your head. Wow. This poor soul might technically be immune to those things in a perverse way, but it comes at a cost. He's hardly a more fit organism, and these mutated bacteria are just hobbled, busted up versions of the original. Darwinian evolution
okay,
can't get very far by breaking things.
Okay, so again,
this is what I mean. This is what I mean when he bastardized the definition of fitness as meaning no trade-offs. If you have trade-offs, you mean you're less fit. Yeah.
Right. So, yeah, this is just annoying. So they're not just losing a whole bunch of stuff, right? We already have mentioned examples of this. So one of the examples that's very common is they basically like pump out whatever the antibiotic is. They get better at pumping it out of their system. That's not breaking things. That's like making them faster. I don't know how that breaks things. Or another is changing your enzymes such that the antibiotic becomes the substrate that they act on. So they digest, they break down the molecules into smaller molecules that are harmless. Again, doesn't break anything. You're taking something that already exists and you're just changing the function to do something else.
Right.
That's it.
I actually know. I have found like one good example of this. It's an enzyme called aminoglycoside acetyltransferase enzyme, which normally breaks down, as the name suggests, it normally breaks down aminoglycoside antibiotics like kanamycin and neomycin. But there are mutant variations of this that is also able to break down synthetic fluoroquinone antibiotics as well. And it's interesting because that's a very different class of antibiotics, a very different compounds, and yet there are only a few. Like I don't know exactly how many mutations are required, or perhaps only a few, but it's still able to digest those without losing the former activity. So it's nice as a broad spectrum resistance because of that mutations. And I can link the paper in the live chat for.
Ugly German Truth makes a really good point. Wouldn't having no liver make alcohol worse, as it does not break down and continues to poison your cells much longer? Using facts and logic, Ugly German Truths. Why would you do that? Doesn't make any sense.
And he's also like the analogy he used about this person like losing his arms and legs. So now you're immune to to broken bones in your arms and legs, and then losing your teeth. Or now you're immune against cavities. Of course, this is disingenuous because under no reasonable circumstance you have greater reproductive fitness when you're losing these things. But the whole point is antibiotic-resistant bacteria are more fit under certain circumstances. And very relevant circumstances, especially in hospitals where these antibiotics are prevalently used. Yeah.
Yeah. But also, I also do want to point out that by losing things, losing things does also fall under evolution, right? So parasites often lose parts as they become more and more specialized on their hosts, like nematodes.
Oh, yeah.
And tapeworms, things like that. As they become more and more host specialized, they often lose parts, like parts of their digestive system or nervous system or whatever, until they basically are just relying on the host's body to give them everything. And that's still evolution, right? That's still specializing on a particular host for these processes. And in fact, sometimes they may actually specialize on like being a parasite, but then they can also break out of that. So like leeches are, they're blood-sucking parasites, but some leeches have independently left the blood-sucking niche and are just predatory. So they eat like small animals instead of just sucking blood. There's one family called Erpobdelidae. I guess I can put that here in, I guess I'll put it in our live chat because why not?
This is also a concept that is often difficult for these kind of people to grasp, is that there is no objectively better or worse. It's only your circumstances and how to deal with those circumstances that you're facing with. So it goes like a very old concept that I think you're familiar with. Is the scale of nature, or the so-called evolutionary ladder, where everything is arranged from bad or worse to better and superior.
Right.
But that's entirely bullshit. Like there is no higher or lower life forms. Just like there is no higher or lower position in space. There is that up and down. The concept of up and down doesn't exist in the universe. It's just like the concept of more evolved or less evolved doesn't exist in evolution.
Haldane, I think. Well, he probably, I don't know if he coined it, but he made famous the concept of the fitness landscape. And so the fitness landscape is it's this idea that if you do like a topographic map of like which alleles help you or hinder you, and so there are going to be like valleys, and then there are going to be hills, and then there are going to be mountains, and so you can traverse, like the eye, for instance, the vertebrate eye is at like the top of one of the mountains, and you can start from like this flat plane and gradually work your way up, getting more and more complex. But the fitness landscape can also change as selective pressures change. If it becomes necessary if it becomes unnecessary to have eyes, like for instance, you live in a cave now, so why have eyes? You can't see anything anyways. Doesn't matter how small you make your
why make all those opsin proteins? Why waste your energy to do that?
Right. Yeah. You don't need to do any of that. So just get rid of them. I mean, why have them? And so, it's good to have to have eyes to like avoid predators. But then when you're in an environment where you don't really have to worry about that so much and you can't see anything, then your eyes don't really matter. Fun fact. I probably talked about this before, but my favorite isopod. Is he not? No, he's an amphipod. Sorry, my favorite amphipod is this guy called Ampeliska. And he is a little shrimpy guy who had compound eyes originally, but his ancestors kind of lost most of them, most of the ommatidia within the compound eye.
They were like going benthic, or deep sea.
They were becoming deep sea, but then they, for whatever reason, started coming back up. So they needed eyes again. So they built a camera eye on top of a compound eye. If you guys haven't read,
in the same place or on top of the old structure.
Atop the old ommatidia. There's a lens over the ommatidia. It's crazy.
So you would think that it would be easier to remodify the existing structure, but sometimes the lost structure just becomes the scaffold for a new structure, perhaps. Yeah, it's interesting.
Yep. So if you guys haven't read Mount Improbable by Richard Dawkins, he does talk about it in there, so highly recommend.
Yeah. Also, one commentator says that sounds like the medieval great chain of being. Yes, the great chain of being is what I was referring to. And it's also called the in Latin. It's called the Scalae Naturae, if I pronounced it correctly. Yeah, it's an old idea. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Ugly German Truth says, is the mechanism known by which the first light-sensitive cells went from another function to reacting to light? So, opsins are in a family of proteins called G protein coupled receptors? Yeah, G protein coupled receptors. So these are membrane proteins that exist even in bacteria and archaea. So they're in all three domains of life. And what they do is they allow materials to move back and forth in and out of cells when
I like maybe I'm wrong, but if I remember correctly, it's more like they sense things outside of the cell, and they induce signal. Yeah, they induce signaling inside the cell. Basically.
Well, because in some like halotolerant archaeans, it's like when sunlight hits them, they like import some ion, isn't it? Isn't that one of them?
I think those what they are doing is that they pump when they are hit by photons, these proteins pump protons, and that is used to generate ATP. Basically, it's a form of photosynthesis that the Archaeans use. Yeah,
G protein coupled receptors. So basically, this is so these are membrane proteins, and they work in all three domains, and so we have, as well as other groups of organisms, have co-opted a subsection of these proteins to basically cause to do phototransduction. So they basically initiate a cascade of biochemical pathways when they are hit by photons. So that's what happens in our eyes. That's why when I did my debate with what's his name, the Islamic apologist, he was like, it's
Finding Truth.
Finding Truth. He's like, it's such a complicated biochemical pathway. It's like, I was like, well, I mean, it is biochemistry. That's how that works. It's how everything in our body works. It's all biochemistry.
I love your reaction when he was talking about like how respiration works, and we don't know how respiration works, and your jaw just dropped. I
was a little confused. To this day, I don't really know what he meant by that, but anyway, so to answer your question, Ugly German Truths, we actually did a video where we talked about it. The howler monkey's tail. We talked about the evolution of G protein coupled receptors and how opsins are a subset of them in the howler monkey's tail. So if you like that, howler monkeys.
G protein coupled receptors also is a huge superfamily of enzymes, and it's also like the famous ones are the opsins, of course, but there's also like I think also the olfactory proteins are also in there as well.
I think you're right. Yeah, I believe you're right.
Yeah. Or maybe some of them, maybe not all of them. But yeah. It's a very like once you have the basic structure that is able to, like on the outside of the cell, it's able to bind to a ligand, and then that binding will induce a signaling inside of the cell. That once that appears, it allows you to do a whole lot of things from that. Yeah.
And what's cool is lots of other is there are even Ahmed, what's his name? Yeah. What's cool is that there are even protists who use like different proteins, probably in the G protein coupled receptor group, to detect light, right? Mm-hmm. So they detect light, and they can, some of them, there are actually some fungi that use it to detect bioluminescent bacteria that they eat, which is kind of cool. Ooh. So yeah, I don't remember offhand what species that is, but yeah. So anyway, yeah, we can keep going.
To you.
Things. Eventually, it'll run out of things to break. And in reality, when antibiotics are removed from the environment, these superbugs just sort of die out, because without the help of the antibiotics keeping the stronger, normal bacteria at bay, they can't compete and they die out. Those are the two ways that bacteria can resist antibiotics. Okay, forget about antibiotics. Let's look at the experiment that Darwinists always point to show evolution right before our...
Oh, Peter, I think actually that was a very good display of what actually happened to LSS. At some point, his brain just left. It just hopped right out.
Yep.
Also, one correction. Like I previously said that he would say that the antibiotic resistance bacteria does not have an advantage at all. But he just says that they do have an advantage when the antibiotics are present, and that's the whole point. When it's present, then it's an advantage. That's the whole point of it.
Hey, Nestle, don't you know that breathing air is only an advantage while you live on land? And in fact, if you jumped in the water, breathing air would not be an advantage. Were you aware?
Well, sometimes it's an advantage if you are living in an environment where the water can become anoxic. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's true. But like, or vice versa. If you live totally underwater and you have to have water to breathe, and suddenly you find
If
yourself in
you're
an
a deep
environment.
sea fish, would it be beneficial to have air breathing
Let's
capability?
say
No
you're a
idea.
salmon, and you're on land, and that sucks for you because you can't breathe. So yeah. Okay. Anyway. All right. What is
I
the
continue.
evolution right before our very eyes? What is this one? Is
Very
it the E.
eyes.
coli
The
experiment?
granddaddy of bacterial lab work,
Yes.
Richard Linsky's long-term
Dun, dun,
evolution
dun.
experiment.
Ding, 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 ding.
In this famous
I was gonna
experiment,
lie about
Linsky has simulated in the lab, over the course of a few decades, more than 1 million years of evolution with bacteria. Since humans and other large organisms can take years or even
guess.
decades to reproduce, it's difficult to see any change between generations happening in our lifetimes.
That's
But
true.
smaller microorganisms like the bacteria E. coli can reproduce in just minutes, letting us
also
observe
true.
tens of thousands of generations and the changes that go along with that in real time. This is what Linsky has done for the past quarter of a century or so. Just let a bunch of E. coli bacteria reproduce and watched what happened. Pretty soon after the experiment began, he noticed that they started to grow much faster than normal. Then, a while later, Linsky's E. coli suddenly gained a new ability to eat something new called citrate. This was an earth-shattering find in the world of evolutionary biology. Scientists were swooning in the streets. To hear them tell the story, this was a huge new evolutionary leap, proving beyond a shadow of a doubt the power of random mutation and natural selection. But would you believe it
Powerful
if I
moment.
told you there was a problem with this?
All right. What's up?
Yeah. As you notice, like he's deliberately hyping the story up in order to erect a straw man, and then he says, "No,
Sure.
it's not as impressive as I just made it out to be." All right.
Oh,
Yeah.
I do also want to say, who's your buddy for $5? Didn't you know that having our digestive tract is only a benefit in 3D and would be a detriment if we were 2D? Well, I imagine that's probably true. I believe that. Yeah, that makes sense to me. Thank you for the $5.
I think there are like pretty flat organisms like placozoans that have like their quote stomach on the outside. Yeah.
Yeah, there's placozoans are super
Yeah.
weird. They excrete, or sorry, secrete. They secrete like digestive enzymes like fungi, and then basically like take in their food, which is weird for an animal. But placozoans are weird anyways.
Yeah. It's also weird that we still pretty much an open question about where they belong. Like, are they closely related to the Palatarians, or are they closely related to the Cnidarians, or to both? Like, where do they belong? Still an open question.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, placozoans are they're just weird. Well, ctenophores are weird too, right? Because
Yeah,
for
yeah.
so long, people were just like, they're similar to jellyfish, and it's like, nah, they might actually
No.
be more basally derived than sponges, even, which is a trip.
Yeah, I've seen like recent papers that also like many of them suggest that the ctenophores are like if not the earliest branch of animals, and they have independently evolved the neurons.
Yeah,
if that would be interesting if that were true.
Yeah, they're pretty much every tree I see them. They're either the most basally derived, or they are like second most basally derived, like just after sponges. It's pretty much always that nowadays.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I saw something else. The platypus has no stomach. That is true. Seahorses, or cygnathids in general, also don't have stomachs. Fun fact.
Oh, really? Oh, I did not know that. I didn't know that the platypus has no stomach.
Yeah, I mean he does also just eat like little invertebrates, so you don't really need a he's just kind of taking them in, digesting them. For cygnathids,
do they secrete? They don't have any stomach acid, or do they have some type of acid to replace the function of?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure what they're or where predominantly they're doing the digesting. I'm not super sure. I just know that I have read that they don't have a stomach per se. That the organ, they don't have an organ that's homologous to our stomach. So
Jackson, that's what you get with chimeras. They forget some of the parts. Putting them
that's
together.
true. You make a little you're a little like Frankenstein monster. Sometimes you forget stuff. It happens.
Oh, it happens.
Be careful. Be careful. Like, perhaps LSS will be viewing this, and he will take that as an admission that it is indeed indeed a chimera.
I wouldn't put it past him, honestly. He's not the brightest.
He has claimed it is a chimera.
He did, and not only he didn't even say it as a joke either. He defended it. He was like, "No, it's got the fur of an otter and feet and a bill like a duck and a tail like a beaver." And it's like,
and venom of a
please,
snake. Yeah.
Stop, please, just stop talking, please. We beg you. We actually did a whole video on why the platypus is most assuredly not a chimera. It was the platypus's tail. Because remember, he got all huffy when we told him that, like, for one, the platypus's bill is not like a duck's bill. It's not the same material. It's like, fleshy skin.
And it becomes especially clear if you look at the skull.
Yes.
It's the skeleton. And
right.
Is no way it's just swapped out.
Right. Because the duck's bill is two separate parts, right? It's two separate parts. The platypus, like, the mouth comes out of the bottom of the bill. Right? So it's not it's not anywhere the same. Same with the toes. The duck, the toes go all the way to the end of the webbing. The platypuses don't. Like, the webbing extends beyond the toes. It's just it's not the same in like any way. Also, the electroreceptors. There are electroreceptors in the platypus's bill, which are modified mammalian structures. Right?
Yeah, they are very similar to sweat glands. Maybe they are evolved from sweat glands, or maybe they are evolved from a similar structure related to sweat glands too. Yeah,
and likewise,
fish have lateral line organs, which are different. But interestingly, the lateral line organs of fish are very similar to like some structure in our inner ears, like the hair cells, for example. The lateral line organs also have hair cells.
Yeah, the little mast cells. Yeah. So it's not in any way, shape, or form like a duck at all. And he was like, well, how can you tell the difference between homology and convergence? And it's like, my guy, this is what the entire conversation has been about. What are you doing? What are you talking about? So yeah, no.
Perhaps you should have asked before you made a video on that.
Multiple videos, right? It was like the second or third one where he claimed the platypus was a chimera. So it was one of the responses. So anyway, all right, we can keep. Let's see let's see why the Linsky experiment isn't actually all that cool. So.
Well, you already guessed it before we started it. Yeah.
I also imagine
explanation is that
I'm curious.
Evidence for the creative power of evolution. No? Good, because that would be untrue. There are at least 3 problems with this explanation.
Okay, let's go.
What exactly happened to cause the E. coli to grow so much faster? Well, they broke their flagella. What is that, and why would it make them grow faster? The flagella is a little outboard motor of the bacteria. It helps them move around and do their thing. But Linsky's bugs were in flasks that were swished around constantly, allowing them to get nutrients without ever having to move. They were spoon-fed lazy bums. This usually vital part was not currently needed, so it was a waste of energy, and they got rid of it. It's like selling the wheels off your car when you're at a stoplight. You'll save.
Like, there are several issues with this. Like, first off, they were not spoon-fed because, like, one of the challenges that Linsky put them under is a limited supply of glucose. That was the environmental stress that they were put under. Like, which variety can make more efficient use of the little bit of glucose that they were supplied with. So they weren't spoon-fed at all. They were swirled in a flask, but the reason why is because like the way Linsky experiment works is you take a sample after each generation.
They want it to be homogenized.
Yeah, exactly. They don't want to have it clump up together because it would mess up your experiment. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Which
if you're allowed for clumping, then you would, and then every time you take a sample with the pipette, you would select for or against clumping. It would be
right. It'd be the yeast experiment that Ratcliffe et al. Did, or they made them like multicellular. Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. Yeah.
And also last point is that I looked it up, and the strain, the starting strain that they used is strain B of E. coli, and they already didn't have flagella.
Ah. Okay.
Yeah. It's like it's a strain that already did not have flagella. I think they may have like some genes, not all of them, but some genes for flagella. But so it could be the case that this strain of bacteria already lost before it was used in this experiment. So yeah, even beforehand.
Okay.
Yeah.
And he got it right for once, losing something because you don't need it anymore, and it's costing energy and stuff.
Yeah.
And now he's comparing that by selling the wheels of your car when you're standing in front of a red traffic light. That's not how that works.
It's like imagine if you never needed tires again, right?
Yeah.
It's because what he keeps failing with these analogies is he assumes that doing something once is like if you do it once, then it's going to be, I guess, forever. Or if you're under that selection pressure once, then you'll do this crazy thing, and then you'll just be screwed forever after. But the point that we're trying to make over and over again with the antibiotic resistance is it's not that they're under the selective pressure once, it is they are constantly under it. They are constantly engaging with it, and that's why there's a sustained selective pressure, and that's why they keep that these mutations spread throughout the population, and they outcompete the individuals who don't have those. With the car analogy, it would be like not that you're stopped at a stoplight, but that like tires became irrelevant forever.
Yes.
Like you never needed tires again.
It's also the case that like many bacteria, especially E. coli, that are used in laboratory settings, they are often deliberately used those varieties that don't have flagella. For example, if you want to make insulin, for example, the bacteria that don't make flagella are more useful because they don't waste a lot of energy into the flagella.
Right.
Yes.
They use more they can use more of the energy to make the insulin.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which makes
but also there is one.
Which makes this analogy
Go ahead.
pretty good, because creationists don't need a brain, so they would actually sell their wheels while waiting for a red light and not thinking that it might turn into green at some point.
That's why you should buy gold. No, just kidding. Don't buy gold.
This has to be one of the dumbest analogies ever. Also, I wouldn't put the blocks under your car at that position, because not going to be beneficial for your car. That's not where
it's going to sag in the middle and just destroy your the front and back of your car.
Yeah, those parts are usually made out of plastic and not made to carry the whole weight of a car.
Yeah,
it's why you put your jack somewhere else if you get a flat tire.
Right. Please don't let LSS change your tires if he offers. Don't let him do it.
No.
He will hurt himself, or you, or both.
And the car.
But there was also another experiment where they used the bacterium Pseudomonas fluorescens, and they engineered this bacteria to have it not make flagella anymore by deleting a regulatory gene.
Yes, and then they re-evolved the ability, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. They were put under strong selection for motility, and these bacteria consistently regained flagella within 96 hours.
That's insane. That's just
crazy.
And
they did so by recruiting a homologous regulatory gene. That was homologous to the one that was lost, basically. They recruited it, yeah.
That's awesome. I remember, I think Dan has talked about that in one of his videos, but That's just such a cool
I can link.
experiment. Yeah, please do. Please link it. Yeah.
I can link the paper in the chat. There we go.
All right, we can keep going.
A lot of gas that way, sure, but you haven't really made a better car, and it'll sort of be a problem the next time you need to go anywhere. Well, what about the citrate thing? It's gotta be obviously true that being able to eat a brand new substance is a good thing for these little fellas. Like if we could eat dirt or something. Imagine the possibilities. Well, to make a long story short, all of the complex genetic pathways and proteins needed to transport and metabolize citrate were there all along. Not only that, but E. coli also already had a sophisticated mechanism to turn this ability on and off depending on its environment, so that they could prioritize their optimum food source,
let's
glucose,
pause.
and not
Pause. Okay, so I guess we have to explain this now. So the new citrate thing, it's not that they developed the ability to metabolize citrate in total. That's not what happened.
Yeah.
So what did happen, because it kind of sounded like he explained it that way earlier. What did happen is they metabolize citrate in anaerobic environments. So when there is no oxygen present, then they can metabolize citrate. So the novel phenotype is that they developed the ability to metabolize citrate in aerobic environments, which is the environment they were in. They were in an aerobic environment. So what had happened was there was a duplication of a couple genes. There's like a little segment of genes, and the whole segment got duplicated and put end to end. And so by doing that, by taking the segment and putting it at the end of the first segment, it placed the whole thing under the control of a promoter that is only activated under aerobic conditions. So normally, the genes that are needed, all these genes, are in front of it. Are in front of that promoter, but by duplicating them, it put them behind the promoter, so that when the promoter got activated, it activated everything else. And so, that is a novel phenotype that they did not possess before, and that's one of the definitions, in fact, of E. coli is the inability to metabolize citrate aerobically. Now, there's an argument creationists have made that actually there are different ways that they can evolve the ability to metabolize citrate aerobically. Okay. They're all through mutations, right? There are different mutations that can lead you to the same phenotype. And that's fine. No one said there weren't. I don't think that's like a super huge discovery, but they act like, oh, that just destroys it. Like, no, that's fine. In fact, that's one of the arguments against the waiting time problem, is that there are multiple mutational routes to the same phenotype. And because what creationists try to do is they say, well, the only way you can get to this phenotype is through this particular set of mutations. But we don't know that to be the case. And in fact, for a lot of phenotypes, there may be multiple mutational routes to the same one. Right? So yeah, that's actually one of the arguments against the waiting time problem. Oh, also, Trudy Stubbs for $1.99. Super late. How much BS did I miss? About an hour and a half of it.
A lot. Yeah, a lot.
So you'll have to put this on like times 2 or something. I don't know. Go ahead, Nestle.
There's also another story to this. Like, as you said, that they are able to metabolize citrate under anaerobic conditions. But they also require another co-metabolite, such as glucose or maybe a fumarate, basically they require something else in addition to citrate to under anaerobic conditions. But these new bacteria, they can rely on citrate as the sole source of carbon, basically. So they again, it's another new element. They not only can do this in the presence of oxygen, but also as the sole source of the carbon as well. And it's also interesting that they did some background research on the ancestors of it, and then it turns out that there are like they were it requires some potentiation mutations. Basically,
yes, yeah,
it requires mutations that by themselves, like these mutations don't do anything yet,
right.
but they lay down the groundwork for this new phenotype to come about with another more mutation. So it's an
Right.
interesting argument about how contingency plays a role in evolution.
Yeah, that paper, by I think Blount was one of the who was the one who did like the original paper on this, that discovered the citrate, the CIT plus mutants. He talked about contingency and evolution, and right, yeah, without those other mutations that didn't necessarily do anything on their own, you couldn't have had the later function.
Mhm.
So yeah. I do remember also them saying that it was extraordinarily unlikely that the duplication would happen, because like they had to essentially wait for all the other mutations that had a way higher fitness effect to basically sweep through the population before this one could come along. So yeah, which again is contingency, right? So all right, I think we covered that one.
Yeah, it's like that they found aspect of both. Like it's one big question in the field of evolution, that whether evolution is like deterministic.
Mhm.
Like if you replay the tape of life, would you get the same result again and again?
Mhm.
And basically, landscape experiment allows us to see some of these things. Like they basically have two separate populations of E. coli, and you can see some things that are very deterministic or very predictable. Like all 12 populations experienced similar mutations and similar phenotypes under this selective pressures, but only one population evolved this rare phenotype. So it may be the case that there are
Right.
aspects of both involved. Like there is some phenotypes that are easily evolved and very predictable, but sometimes you have like a very rare event that can have very drastic effects.
Right. Yeah, and I like Gould's analogy of that because so he coined that analogy in for anyone who hasn't read it, Wonderful Life, his book on the Cameron explosion. And one of the things that is unique about the Cameron explosion is you have you have an event called the Burgess decimation. So basically you have an extinction event that just sort of randomly wipes out different lineages. And Gould kind of poses this question of like, well, why did Anomalocaris, which is this big meter-long arthropod, get wiped out, but little tiny Pikaia, this little squishy guy who's like the ancestor of chordates, why didn't he get wiped out? Why did they survive, whereas Anomalocaris didn't, and stuff like that. And so it's a really good book. Highly recommend. Gould's a good writer in general, so again, highly recommend his stuff. Haven't read as many of his books as Dawkins, but I have read a few. And they're all pretty good. So, okay, we can keep going.
Not waste energy. All that happened was that the sophisticated control mechanism, the switch, broke. This bacteria lost the ability to turn off an ability
it
that they
didn't
already
break.
had.
That didn't happen.
Now it was stuck always on, wasting
That's not
energy
what
to
happened.
try and transport and metabolize citrate even when it wasn't necessary. It's sort of like
That's
this
also
alarm
not what
clock. It has
happens.
the ability to make this lovely noise. It's a nice ability, but it can be turned on and off. But what if the alarm clock was broken so that it made that noise forever and could never be turned off? Much better,
Okay,
right?
pause.
Right?
So they're not just like, I don't even know how that would work because they can only metabolize the citrate when it's present in their environment. How would you turn on this thing if there's no citrate in your environment? How would that work? Right? Like I don't know how that would work. Like I guess your cell is constantly making like the enzymes to digest citrate, I guess. I don't know. It doesn't make any sense. It's just a lie. That didn't happen. Ugly German Truth said, "How do you know how many of Gould's books Richard Dawkins has read?" I said I haven't read as many Gould books as I have read Richard Dawkins books. That's what I said. I know Dawkins has read at least one because Dawkins cites Wonderful Life in The Ancestor's Tale. So I know he's read at least one. Okay.
And there's also one interesting story that I haven't told about the citrate trait. Is that in the flask where the cit plus cells were present, there were also a small subpopulation which couldn't digest or use citrate, but they were specialized. Basically, they were specialized for a different substrate. So basically, you've what's called maybe in ecology almost, where one type makes use of one substrate and another type makes use of another substrate. And also, if I'm not mistaken, the CIT plus or the bacteria that use citrate, they leak some substance. For example, those who make use of citrate, they release succinate and malate and fumarate, and then the other population can use those substrates as well. So you almost have like an ecology almost in this one flask, where you have two different types coexisting and cooperating almost. It's really interesting as well.
Yeah. But yeah, this is just a lie. Just to say that it's broken is a lie.
Completely unrelated.
Yeah, it's not.
I had to chuckle there. Ugly German truth. That's what you get if you mock the host. Sorry.
Blocked and reported. Yep.
Yeah. That was great.
All right.
Anyway. As you said, the regulatory element did not break. There is a new regulatory module thanks to the gene duplication that occurred. So you didn't break it. You made a new one. Yeah. That's what happened.
It can also operate in another circumstance. Right? There are now two circumstances in which it can operate as opposed to the original one. Apparently that's breaking it, I guess. What? I don't know, question mark. I don't know. It was a joke. You're not blocked and reported. Ugly German truths.
You're okay.
I don't know. You're okay. You're fine. I didn't block or report you. You're fine. Okay. All right. Let's keep going.
It's still funny. Sorry.
How could this not be a win? Sometimes it's good for your alarm clock to make noise, but it's very good to be able to turn it off too. E. coli could already do a thing, and they were broken so that they did that thing constantly, whether they needed it or not. Maybe you call that evolution, but Darwinian evolution demands innumerable new genes, new proteins, new body plans, new organs, and complex characters that we see in nature. This is not that. It's equivocation.
Okay, so he did do the thing, surprise. He said, aha, this one thing is not molecules to man evolution, therefore you're debunked. Which, okay, whatever.
Can you show me a T-Rex turning into a duck?
I can't.
Please.
I cannot do that. So I guess evolution is defeated. Whatever.
Checkmate, atheist.
Right, checkmate, atheist. Yeah. Well, yeah, you're correct. Couldn't one of these two theoretically mutate further for a third food source so it doesn't have to rely on the old food source? Yes. Yeah, so that's like subfunctionalization is one of those, or niche differentiation. These are different ways that you can go from like having one particular ecology to like splitting to a new one. So, yeah, no, what he's doing, he's actually the one doing the equivocating. Yes, it is true that mutating and then undergoing natural selection to increase the relative frequency of a particular allele is evolution, like definitionally. But that is not on its own how we went from like Luca to the diversity of all life on this planet. It's not how that happened on its own. That is not the sole process by which that happened, is what I mean. So he's the one equivocating here, not us. All right, we can keep going.
Using language so ambiguously that it misleads. For example, Aristotle was Greek.
You mean
Greek
like when he
is
said
a delicious
that
kind
the
of
gene
food.
was broken? You mean like that?
Yeah.
Like when he said that the citrate gene was broken? Huh? No? Okay. Sorry. All right.
Can you please explain what actually happened at the genome level? Can you explain it, please, for me, LSS?
Right, exactly.
Can you
Please
do that?
do. A little curious. Yep. Sorry, keep going.
Aristotle must have been delicious. Evolution has so many definitions that it's sometimes difficult to pin down what is meant by it. One could
If only
mean
we could,
a
like,
shift in pre-existing
define it.
populations, like Darwin's
Whoa.
finches or peppered moths,
Wow.
or breeding or cultivation, like dogs or plants. But these are miles apart from extrapolating random mutation and natural selection can build new organs or body plans.
Okay,
Or
pause.
universal common ancestry.
You're right. It's almost as if there are different terms for these processes. Like breeding or artificial selection is a different thing from just evolution broadly or universal common descent. It's almost like we have different words for these different ideas. How silly. What a crazy world in which we live. Goodness gracious, what a moron. Sorry, we can keep going.
Zucchini are related to tuna fish, which is even further apart from the wild claim that it all happens strictly through materialistic processes.
We have to bring in
Darwinists
the Big Bang,
equivocate
of
when
course.
evidence is presented to prove one definition of evolution, where there is evidence and everybody agrees, and then another definition is quietly swapped in based on wild extrapolations to hoodwink people who aren't paying close enough attention.
9 out of
But this
10
is
times
very ironic because
that different definition will come from the creationists trying to undermine
Correct.
the first definition.
Yep.
I'm just saying.
But this is just like ironic and also a bit hypocritical because the only people who will use for the term evolution to mean like philosophical naturalism
Right.
or
Yeah.
material atheism and such, like the only ones who use it that way are they use
Literally
it that way.
just creationists. It's
Yes.
just
Yeah.
creationists. That's it. Nobody else. Yep. God. What a hack. This is why I stopped responding to this guy. He's a freaking hack. He's dishonest. And it's
What?
and we
A
talked to him,
dishonest
he just got
creationist?
more
He's a-
dishonest.
A dishonest creationist, Jackson? Are you sure?
I know.
I mean, that's-
Call me crazy.
That is so crazy.
But the specific reason we stopped responding was because he just ignored a huge portion of your response, and that's
Of our response. It was our response. In fact, I'm pretty sure
Yeah.
you wrote it. For being honest, I'm pretty sure you wrote it. So yeah, he ignored like upwards of half of the video.
Well,
Just
in
for
in
no
all
reason.
fairness, in all fairness, Jackson, if you are a creationist, you have to ignore at least half, if not more. So it's completely in line with
That's
with
fair.
the species.
I will retitle this video since we're just doing the long story short thing today. All right, let's wrap it up.
Yeah, we got 2 minutes to go.
To extrapolate
How
from
long-
antibiotic resistance to the larger kinds of changes evolution would need to make new animals, it's kind of like saying, last week, this cow could jump 1 foot high. This week, she can jump 2 feet high. Doubling at that rate in just 30 more weeks, she'll be able to jump clear over the moon.
Pause. I want to point something out about this, which is extremely funny to me. Creationists are again the ones who do this. Kent Hovind is the one who says there is a linear recession rate for the moon, and the one who says there is a linear accumulation of sediment in the seas. So the oceans can't be the world can't be old because the oceans would have like infinitely less salt in them, right? Because there's a linear accumulation of sediment. This is literally the argument creationists make. It's
also
so much projection.
But
So
it's
much projection.
But it's also pretending that one animal evolves during a lifetime. It is in the definition, guys, in generations over time.
Yep.
Not a single animal. It's not going to be born and evolve over time before it dies and then passes on all the nutrients. That is not how that works.
Yeah. Yep.
It's a bad extrapolation. There's a hard limit to how high.
He got it right. It's a bad extrapolation.
He's on point with that one. Yes,
he's like a broken clock. Twice a day.
Yeah,
he can be
true.
right.
Yep.
High cows can jump. And there's a hard limit to the time and populations available to evolution, and to the number of features bacteria can break before running out of things to break. Darwin didn't write a book called How Pre-Existing Organisms Break Themselves. He purported to explain how novel species came about from a single common ancestor. And at least as far as this is concerned, it was a failure. Darwin can't get very far by squandering pre-existing genetic information. Darwin's mechanism creates variation largely by throwing genetic information overboard and selecting for damaged
talk about
or
being
broken
vague.
genes.
What is information?
He can't get very far, but he wrote a book, and for a lot of the parts in the book, it's still relevant today. Still a lot of truth in that book, unlike.
Yeah. I mean, the core principle of natural selection is effectively unchanged, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
From 1859, right? I mean, we've changed, we have lots of other new aspects that we've added on to natural selection, of course, in the time hence.
And figured more
The
out.
core principle about differential reproductive success based on variations in response to environmental pressures, that's the same. That hasn't changed.
The weird thing
years
is,
later.
the weird thing is, if one guy discovers something, people will take notice and start observing it and see if they can find more evidence for it. And that is basically what happens. That's why you won't find Noah's Ark. Sorry.
Blissfully unaware that it's marooning itself on an island of genetic fragility, making organisms, ironically, less able to adapt in the future, thus hindering larger scale changes from accumulating.
He didn't make that case
There's an old
at
joke
all.
that
No.
He did not make. He didn't say anything about that throughout the course of the video. He just asserted it, like tacked on at the end.
The perfect pause. Everything he said about that specific topic is on screen right now.
Correct. Yep. Yeah, he literally made no case whatsoever that organisms become less able to adapt in the future. Literally none. This is just a new thing. Okay.
Yeah.
Stupidity.
Quickly summarizes what's going on. Wow, you're so rich. What's your secret to becoming a millionaire? Oh, it's easy.
Make videos
First
for
start
the
with $1
Discovery
billion
Institute.
and then light a bunch of it on fire. Bacterial evolution is lauded as a premier example of Darwinism in action. As Dawkins puts it, before our very eyes.
Okay, Jackson, can you now block and report Deemwing as well?
What did he say?
We found Noah's Ark several times.
That's all right. As far,
Yes.
and the great thing is not even just in the mountains of Ararat,
Nope.
because there's debate as to whether it's Mount Ararat or the mountains of Ararat. But then there have also been claims that it was found in Iran, which is not where the mountains of Ararat are, and also even in China.
Yep.
So,
And can I point out that the last time I have seen someone trying to defend Noah's Ark was a debate that our good boy our altar boy, what was he, an atheist altar boy? I forgot what it was.
the altar boy of atheism.
Yeah,
RJ?
altar boy of atheism. He's still in the chat right
Okay.
now. He debated someone who actually said nothing during the entire debate. Nothing. He equated him to a potted plant. And that was the guy who usually cannot shut up or cannot say, "I'm not finished yet. I was talking." Here, Otenso
okay.
didn't say
We were
a word.
thinking of different ones. Yeah.
Yeah, Otenso didn't say a thing during the entire debate.
Yeah.
It was the best debate
I think
I've
this is the
seen on
end.
Noah's Ark. 32 seconds.
I mean, this is pretty much the end. It's before our very eyes. Yeah. So to summarize, evolution does happen before our very eyes,
Mm-hmm.
and that's kind of it. There you go. Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah. So yeah, I mean, this video pointed out it made some points in that we do see antibiotic resistance occurring. That's true. He kind of dismissed the mechanisms by which it happened and then lied about the other mechanisms. And then said, well, that doesn't prove that we all share a common ancestor, which on its own, yeah, that's true. It doesn't, but nobody made the argument that it does. So, whatever.
Straw man. Yeah.
Straw man.
Yeah.
Yep. So
Also, it's not us who equivocates things. Like when creationists use evolution, it can mean anything from dogs breeds or to abiogenesis to Big Bang. Yeah.
And he even did that here. He even was like, or by evolution, do you mean like philosophical materialism? And it's like, no one's talking about that. Nobody's talking about that. He just dropped it in out of nowhere. So, all right. Well, we're at the mark. So, what do you guys have going on in the near future?
So
Nothing much.
I've got my so I'm currently doing 4 shows a week that are not on my channel at all. Yeah, I'm helping you with this one, and then we have 3 shows on Raw. We do we blaspheme the Bible twice a week because yeah, we won't be here in 23 years, and we need to get through the entire book. So we do that twice a week now on Wednesday and Saturday. So
okay.
And then on Sunday there's the Book of Mormon. Sorry, I keep getting that wrong. And I basically took a bit of a break because here's the thing. This is kind of evolutionary principle according to long story short. I used to do a lot of work with my hands, a lot of physical work, and then I evolved into someone who sat behind his computer pretty much all day, making fancy artwork and logos and stuff. And now I'm trying to build a few things around the house, and I need to get rid of some trees. Now, getting rid of trees isn't the big problem. Fact is that those trees apparently have another structure underground that you then need to get rid of as well. That's the hard part. And so yeah, I don't have enough energy to do both, to stay up all night and then during the day digging and chucking down trees.
Yeah.
I'll get back soon. I hope.
Understandable. Yeah. We do appreciate you, Peter. I wouldn't be here without you.
It's still I still put out 8 hours a week or more sometimes, even though I don't do a single show on my channel. So there is that, and the cool shows.
Well, you're a cool guy, so makes sense.
Thank you.
On here, Salamander's Tale's coming up. I mean, we're just chugging along. We finally left the amniotes in the Ancestor's Tale. We're finally out of the amniotes. So we're moving on to the amphibians.
How many chapters are there?
For amphibians, 3.
In the whole series. Yeah.
I believe it's either 59 or 60.
All right.
And
so we're almost halfway. We're almost halfway there. All right.
Yeah, I think we're just about. Well, let's see. Hold on. What number are we on?
29, I think, right?
Yes, we're gonna make 29. So yeah, we're just about to the halfway point. And we've been doing this for only 2 years now, 3 years. Yeah. I mean, we put out.
Sorry for those who have requested a video. You're in line.
We put out maybe one of those a month, something like that. Sometimes, one in 2 months. So, but hey, look, we're making it, right? The part of the problem
Yeah.
is these videos take an inordinate amount of research to do.
Mhm.
Like I know you, I know you people out there watching them. Like, yeah, it's a 20-minute video or 25 minutes, whatever. It takes hours and hours and hours to do the research. The actual putting the video together part takes a few hours. It's easy. It's just repetitive. But the research takes hours and hours and hours and hours and hours. Like I just sit, and a lot of times I'll just like sit and pump out like a couple pages, a few pages, and then I'll be like, I'm done for today. I'll come back and pick this up tomorrow or something because it's like 4 or 5 hours later. Because I'll have to read like books and technical papers.
This is the yeah. It is the opposite of what happens on like Standing for Truth channel, where they don't do any research and they talk for hours and hours of nonsense on live YouTube.
Yeah, it takes a lot of time to write these scripts, and then Nestle also does research for these things. So yeah, between all of us, it takes hours. Yeah. So anyway,
and you left one thing
so
out. Left one thing out that a lot of people don't think that you actually have. There's a thing called real life that you also need to engage
that's also
in.
true.
I mean,
what, Peter? That's crazy.
some people think that this is literally the only thing you do when you're on YouTube.
Yeah, when I'm not
that's
on
all
YouTube, let's see. So 5 days a week are work at the aquarium, and then one, if not both, of the days I'm off, I'm doing like thesis stuff. So stuff for my master's thesis. So, and then somewhere in there, I smuggle in like my YouTube stuff. So, are you what?
I was curious. Are you expecting to graduate soon or next year or?
The hope is December.
Oh, really?
December. Yeah.
Nice.
So, yay! Woo. I mean, I'm done with all the classes and stuff. It's really just the paper and the write up and all that, and so then I'll be done. Yeah. So, all right. Well, we're just past the hour now.
Yeah, James has a good comment. It always takes longer to document the facts than the creationist takes to make their stupid claims.
That is unfortunately very true.
Yes.
Yeah.
And in the case of our dear friend Hovind, who says one topic at a time, he's the one who gish gallops all the time. So if he's told to keep it on one topic, and it's not just Hovind, it's Otangelo, same thing. They get mad if you call them out on it.
It's true. Yeah. Alrighty. Well, thank you guys for being here. I appreciate you. And thank you everybody in the live chat for being here. Appreciate all of you guys coming and watching. So we'll see everybody next time.
Bye everyone.